Welcome to my second video of woodworking tools. My first video I covered 5 different pieces of woodworking machinery that you need to get to be able to do basic woodworking. And basic woodworking I meant as fancy boxes, because a lot of furniture and beds and chests of drawers and all that are just basically fancy boxes. Cabinets are fancy boxes. So that's what I covered in the first video. In this video, I'm going to cover 6 different woodworking power tools that you need to be able to start filling in the gaps and to be able to start building your projects. And the first thing would be a cordless drill. And I used to recommend corded drills only for the first time to buy one. But batteries are getting pretty good now and they last a long time. So if you want to get a cordless drill, which may be a little bit more expensive, go ahead. You'll always want a cordless drill of some sort. But I do like a cordless or a corded drill, because when I really need to drill something, having a corded drill provides that extra torque and just cuts better. These things will still bog down a little bit. I don't know if you get the bigger battery, if they do bog down or not, but a good cordless drill is good. Now, you'll need this because you'll want to pre-drill for screws and nails, and you'll want to drive in screws, and you'll need a driver for the screws. Now, if you can get, sometimes these come in a package of 2, and it'll come with an impact driver. If you can get the impact driver, these are invaluable for screws. I didn't know how good they were until I used one, and now I don't drive screws with anything but an impact. So if you can get both of these, for about the same money, go ahead and get them, because you can always pre-drill with one and then drive in your screws with the other. So you'll need this for fasteners and drilling holes and pre-drilling stuff. So a good cordless drill. The second thing I would get would be a good random orbit sander. Now, the first sander I bought was a quarter sheet sander, which is square. You'll notice that they have square pads, and you just put in regular sandpaper. Those don't sand very good, and I don't feel like they're worth it. You may, but I don't. I don't like it. When I bought it, it just didn't work very well. So it always is good to get a random orbit, because it vibrates and then it also spins. So it just sands so much better, faster, and cleaner than a quarter sheet. And you'll want a sander because sanding by hand sucks. And it gets very tedious. And the only time I really sand by hand is if I'm making my own molding, like a video in the past that I did where you can do your own custom molding on a table saw, but you still have to sand out the marks. And that's when I'll hand sand. But other than that, I use this all the time. So second would be a good random orbit sander. This one's a Bosch, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'm a little new to Bosch. I used to buy a lot of Porter cable, but they went downhill years ago, and I don't buy them anymore. So this is, other than another tool of mine, this is my first Bosch, and I'm very happy with it. It's a very nice little sander. So it comes with 2 different kinds of sandpaper. One that sticks on, and then one that's Velcros on. And this is my first Velcro one. Usually I get the ones that stick on. I kind of like the ones that stick on better. I think they sand a little better. The hook and loop of it, I think moves just a little bit, and so you don't really get as much sanding action. I'm not so sure. It just feels like it and it may just be what I'm used to. So, but anyway, there's two different ways you can get the sanding paper for it to stick on. So a good sander. Number 3 is a jigsaw. And I would go ahead and get a jigsaw that's a little bit more expensive than like your Skills or your cheap, Walmart, Harbor Freight, just cheap jig. There's some really cheap jigsaws. Get you a good one. DeWalt makes a really good one. Porter Cable used to, and that's what this is. This is an old Porter Cable. These are really good, but they don't make their tools good anymore. But you want one with good guides on the back here to be able to keep the blade from walking too much, because the blade will be at 90 degrees, but then you start cutting and the force of the cut will pull it one way or another, and you won't have a good 90-degree cut. So get you a good jigsaw. You'll want this for cutting into corners from the table saw or from a skill saw or a circular saw. You'll want it for cutting out holes. You can always pre-drill a hole, stick the blade down in it, and then you can cut out a bigger hole. Cutting out rounded corners. There's many different uses for a jigsaw. Scroll work, for cutting scrolls and things, decorative edges, just really good to have. So I would get it, probably third, it's just really handy to have when you need it. The fourth one is an 18-gauge brad nailer. This used to only come in pneumatic, where you would hook it up to an air compressor. However, Metabo and some other makers make battery-operated ones right now. And I have the framing nailer of Metabo battery-operated, and it is a fantastic nail gun. So either pneumatic or probably a little bit more expensive would be the battery-operated. I haven't used the 18-gauge Metabo battery operated, but if it works anything like the finish nailer, which I have a video of that and it's down below, it's really good. It probably is a really good gun. So I would get an 18-gauge. They sometimes come in short magazines, I guess, where it will only take up to, I think, 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches. I would go ahead and get the one that takes 2 inches, because when you're woodworking, having that 2-inch 18-gauge brad nail is invaluable for face frames, like you're nailing face frames onto a cabinet. If you have just 1.25 inch brad, 3/4 of that's already taken up by the face frame, and you can't even get anything into the plywood. So I'd get 2 inches. That'll give you the extra length that you need. You want to get 18 gauge. There's heavier gauges. I think there's 16 and 15. Those are pretty heavy gauge finish nails, and really I've only used them for home trim. Doing trim in homes and buildings and stuff like that. For woodwork, I most always use just 18 gauge, because this primarily is just going to affix any kind of piece of wood that you already have glue under. So it's just going to hold it still until that glue dries. So you're mainly relying on the glue and not the brad nail, even though the brad nails are pretty tough. So these are great to have and for doing cabinetry work, for doing some furniture that you can fill in, you can fill in the brad holes and blend them in and you won't notice they're there. Depends on the finish, of course, but a good brad nailer, this will be a workhorse for you and you'll use it all the time. Number 5 is a router. Now this is a fixed base router. I have never bought a plunge router, and I've never really felt like I needed one. This is the one I would suggest buying for anybody just starting out. Plunge routers are big, they're expensive, and a lot of times you really don't need them and you can work around them. Like you can tilt your router in if you're doing a mortise and tenon. So you don't really need the plunge. They look nice, but like I said, I never really felt like I'd absolutely needed one. But this size is great because a lot of times you're routing an edge and you'll need to go to one hand. And with a lighter router, you can go to one hand. This one is a 1/4 inch shank to a 1/2 inch shank. This is a classic Porter cable. It's an old one. These are tough as nails. If you can get ones on eBay or whatever, these are great to have. I don't know about the new ones. Like I said, Porter cable has kind of gone downhill, so I don't trust them anymore. But it looks like DeWalt probably makes a pretty good router. Then there's some other ones that are probably pretty good. But I definitely get just a smaller fixed base router. And there's all sorts of attachments. You can make all sorts of accessories for this. You don't have to buy the attachments. You can just make them. They're very handy to have and invaluable for a workshop. The last thing on the list, number 6, is a skill saw or a circular saw. And this is a Porter cable. I bought it before I started realizing they went downhill and the lever broke off. So I'm sure there's a better one out there, DeWalt. If y'all have any suggestions on good tools that I've already showed, what good brands are out there now, drop them in the comments and help people out. But a good circular saw, I would buy a little bit better than the typical skill saw, even though you can do some good work with a skill saw. But the main thing with a circular saw is to get a good blade. The blade that comes with circular saws is usually a construction type saw. And those are just too toothy for any kind of fine work. So you want to get a fine tooth bladed saw blade. That was a mouthful. And it'll give you a lot better cut. I mean, it will improve your cut tenfold. So a circular saw with a straight edge is invaluable for cutting down sheet goods that may be too big for your table saw, or if you have a bench top table saw and you can't really put a full 4x8 sheet on there, you can always just get a straight edge and a circular saw and you can cut a good clean edge on it. If you don't want to make a specific circular saw straight edge, you can always just measure from the blade over to the edge of the fence and then mark that distance on your piece of wood and clamp your straight edge to that. So all you need is just a straight piece of lumber scrap. That's all you need. You don't need a fancy guide. They sell tracks for these things. You don't necessarily need that. I'm sure they'd be great to have, but you don't need them. All you need is 2 clamps and a straight edge, and you can cut really good cuts with the circular saw. So that's number 6, is a circular saw. If you have any suggestions as far as tools, like I said, drop them below. I'll drop the extra videos that I mentioned down below. If you like this video, if it provided you some value, please like or subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.